Hello, my friends, and welcome. Sorry, I'm getting us started a few minutes late. So, I'm still figuring out all sorts of tech in my life. And so, I've got a couple streams going. One that will be recorded. And so, I'm going to be looking at this camera over here, and I'll try to get this one as close. And then this other one that I'm just, doing live kind of last minute in this other camera. So, wherever you catch it, whether you're on Instagram, whether on YouTube, or my personal Updo Collective Facebook page, just come to all the things. So welcome. My name is Heidi, and you are at the Intro to Bridal Hair Masterclass with me today. And I am just going to quickly turn on some Do Not Disturb here. Oops. Okay. Coming back. Hold on, people. So I can have my full attention devoted to you while we're teaching this class. So I'm going to go over my structure for what I do in every bridal updo that I do. And so if you're here and you are newer to wedding hair and you really want to get into it, this is the right place. So I'm going to talk about my number one secret to success in working with brides. I'm going to go over my framework that I do with each and every updo. And then I'm going to actually demonstrate an updo and talk through the steps that I do, really focusing on things that are key to working with brides, and also just strategies that I implement to create really beautiful updos that long lasting through the night, and also are really smooth and clean and don't have a lot of frizz, and focus on the things that brides care about. So this is a great class. I'm excited that you're here with me tonight. If you have any questions and you are live on the chat, then go ahead and pop them in there. And then at the end, I will try to answer all the questions that I have. Okay, you guys. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the number one secret to being successful in bridal hair. And after we talk about that, then we're going to actually get going on this particular updo today. So the first thing that you need to know is that you have full control over whether you say yes or no to a bride. So when you're first getting started, the thing that I don't want you to do is ever to just show up to a bridal trial without chatting with her in person or chatting with her in advance to get an idea of what she's looking for. So the way that you're going to be successful in the beginning as a bridal hairstylist is if you have excellent consultations. And so what I'm talking about is not just a trial that's in person, but your consultation needs to start before you even meet your bride in person. So what does that look like? So if someone is inquiring with you via email or text, whatever it might be, or maybe even just a client that you have behind your chair on a regular basis, you want to find out what she's looking for. You want to find out the style that she's looking for. You want to look at the hair type that she has. You want to look at if she's looking at any accessories. You want to kind of get a whole picture of her vision before you even say yes to her as a bridal client. So by taking a look at what she's looking right off the bat, you can know right away, is this going to be a good fit for me or not? So if you get a bride that you think, oh, this is going to be a great fit. I love this venue. I'm really excited. She found me, blah, blah, blah. I'm really excited. And then you ask her to see her inspiration photo and she sends it to you and you're like, whoa, that looks really, really complicated, way out of my realm. That is a no. That is a pass on to the next person. You're going to save yourself so much headache in the beginning by not meeting someone in person, panicking, sweating, struggling through an updo that you don't know how to do. It's better off in the beginning when you're just starting out to refer the clients that you know you can't serve to somebody else. And therefore, you'll build a good rapport with those people. So you're not struggling with them in person, but also you're just knowing what your limits are in the beginning. Now, if it's something that it's more like maybe you think it looks a little complicated, but you might be able to do it, then what I would recommend is when you get that photo or photos of inspiration from the bride, before you even get started, do some practicing on a mannequin before you commit 100%. Or say yes, you'll do a trial with them, but do the practicing first before you even meet them for the trial. So having that yes or no in the beginning before you even say yes to a consultation, a trial or preview service, however you want to call it, doing that in advance is going to save you like so much headache just off the bat. So if you really want to get a lot of practice, I would recommend starting with bridesmaids, doing free stuff on friends, or throwing an updo on your current clients so you can get practice in beforehand. Don't have a bride be your practice person, okay? So that is like the top thing that I feel like we don't always have we don't always feel like we can say no, and we can. You got to be able to say no. So that is the number one. Now, the second part of the consultation is actually spending a lot of time on the consultation. So sometimes I think we feel like, I don't know, we have to keep it under a certain amount of time, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. But here's the thing about brides. They're spending a lot of time planning their wedding. They're spending a lot of money and time and energy choosing their vendors. And so when you spend a lot of time with them, they're feeling cared for, they're feeling listened to, and they can feel really like you care about their wedding day and you're investing in them. So don't be afraid to spend a long time doing a consultation. So in advance, before they even get to you, asking for pictures, asking for inspo, asking for pictures of the current hair, stuff like that. And then when they actually meet you for the preview or the trial service, that's when you really want to actually sit down with them before you even stand behind them and start looking at your hair. Sit down next to them, look through their portfolio of pictures that they like and what they don't like. Ask them not only about things they do like, but look and say, what don't you like about this? Or what are things that you found that you absolutely know is a no for you? That will give you a lot of insight as well, because sometimes a bride can come to you and bring you a picture, one picture, and you're like, oh, that's great, let's get going. And actually it turns out she just liked one small part of that. She didn't even necessarily like the whole thing. And so you might go and execute on trying to stress yourself out by creating something exactly that she brought, when in actuality, maybe she just liked really a small thing about it, or just the overall vision, but she doesn't exactly care if it looks perfectly like the photo. So that's why you want to sit and ask a lot of questions before you even get started. And doing that in your consultation will really help you before you even move forward in doing the hair. And so also in that consultation, you want to find out lots of details, like, do they like their hair parted down the middle? Do they like it on the side? Do they like their ear showing? Do they not like their ear showing? Do they want to fill out sides because they have a long face? Do they like to have a lot of volume? Like, you just want to ask a lot of questions like that so you get an overall picture of what they're looking at before you even get started. Because then when you have some creativity or you have some creative freedom, you'll actually have a better idea of what they're looking for overall, rather than just assuming you know exactly what you like based off what they like based off one or two pictures. So don't be afraid to sit down next to them, have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and talk through the vision for their wedding and their hair and all of it, and really enjoy getting to know what this bride is looking for. Now, after that, then you can really start getting specific, standing behind them, feeling through their hair, and getting an idea for some of the more details that they're looking at. Are they looking for something that's really low, or do they like how high it is in the picture? Things like that. But start with conversation, okay? So that is my other big key for our consultations. So overall, my number one secret is to have fantastic consultations from the get-go, and that will really, really help set you up for success. Okay, now once you've done your consultation, which by the way, if you signed up for this class, you are going to be getting a guide sent to you. And that guide is going to have the things that I was just talking about. So, sorry, I'm just checking my screen here. Okay, we're good. I'm sending that to you so you have a list of some of the things that I think are really important to go over in your consultations. Okay, so now once you've done your consultation and you're ready to get started on your bride, the first thing that you're going to do with any bridal updo is you need to prep her hair. Excuse me. So what does prepping look like? First of all, when you prep, you're going to be brushing through her whole head. And as you're brushing through her hair, you're getting a feel for how thick it is. Is it really oily? Does she have any thinner spots? Does she have a lot of breakage on the end? You're just starting to get the wheels turning about how you're going to execute this updo as you're brushing through and getting all the knots out and just getting a feel and the lay of the land for her head, okay? Now, the next thing that you're going to be doing is getting ready to think about how you're going to section the hair. So when you're thinking about sectioning, you're thinking about kind of your map of how you're going to approach an updo. And so when you're brushing through, you can kind of figure out, okay, how thick is this hair? Am I going to have to really divide it up? Am I going to need to maybe hide some of this hair because there's a lot of it? Or maybe it's so thin, I'm going to have to add some hair padding. So those are the sort of things that are going to get the wheels turning for you when you're brushing through and prepping with the brush. Now, the next part of prepping is actually adding product. And so I'm going to spray through her whole head with a flexible hold hairspray, and then I'm going to go ahead and brush through again. So that flexible hold hairspray is really going to just lock in a little bit of a base for when you start applying hot tools on her hair. I might also be putting dry shampoo at the roots if I'm finding that it's a little bit oily. I might be adding a little texture powder to the roots if it's feeling really flat and I know she wants more volume. I might even be doing a little crimping in there if it feels like it needs some more prep in that way. So that's what I mean by prepping the hair. So after you've done doing that, which I've already done on a mannequin for the sake of time, then we're going to move on to the sectioning. Now, sectioning is something that you should never skip. Even as someone who's been doing bridal hair for almost 20 years, I still section in some way, shape, or form. Why? Because sectioning is your roadmap to your updo, okay? So everything that you do is going to follow your sections. And if you take the time, especially when you're a new bridal stylist, to take time, section out nice, clean sections, give yourself a clear map of where to go. Then, number one, you're not going to get lost. So sometimes you can get overwhelmed in the hair, right? You're not going to get lost because you're going to be working section by section. You're going to have clean sections. And so that's going to lead to less frizz and a more polished look. When you're grabbing hair and you're not working off of any clean lines, that's when it can start to get messy. That's when you can start to see frizz, holes, things just not pinning right because maybe you don't even know where to pin. And not having good sections is a recipe for having a lot of mess in that way, okay? And then it's also really going to guide you as you go in your updo. So it's going to help give you just the confidence to know you're moving step by step in creating the updo that you really want to execute. So for this particular style, this is kind of my classic sectioning, that if you are doing a lot of updos, you can do this. And so I do this for over 50% of all updos I do. This sectioning will work. So that's why I like to teach this, especially for people just starting out, because it's a great way to learn. And it's especially great for brides because it focuses on what's really important for brides, which is going to be the front of her hair. So for this section, we are doing a headband part. That's top of the head to the top of the ear, sectioning that away. We've already talked about how she wants her side part because she's a millennial. And then we're going to do a triangle section on the top. So it's kind of a rounded triangle section. You kind of go temple to temple and then round that out and pin that away. So having just the headband part sectioned here and this front part here, or this very top part, is going to give you a lot of control. So something that you really need to be thinking about with brides is how the front looks. You can do the most beautiful updo in the whole world in the back. If you flip her around and she looks in the mirror and she doesn't like it, guess what, friends? It doesn't matter because she needs to like how she looks in the front, okay? So it's essential that you make sure that the front looks amazing because if it doesn't, you're going to be pulling and taking things out to adjust it and messing up what you do in the back. So because of that, I like to leave the front out and do that last. Because if I do that last, then I have a lot more control to pull that in, create a softer detail, make sure I'm getting that face framing right, or making it like really slick or whatever I need to do, but I have a lot more control if I save that out for last. And then same with the top. Having this out gives a lot of room for detail, and you can lay it really softly over to make it look really natural, and you have a lot more control to create that beautiful detailed top. Okay, so then what we have left is the back. And for today, I divided it into two sections. It's a little thicker on the bottom and thinner here on the top. If you're working with someone with really thick hair, this is where the sectioning really comes in handy and where that prep is, where you're thinking about how thick the hair is. You might need to do maybe 3 sections here, okay? If the hair is really thin, this might just be 1 section. And so that's what you really want to think about when you're doing the sections in the back, is just thinking about how thick the hair is and how much you need to divide it to have the kind of control you need for the updo that you're going to do. So I'm going to be doing a low bun that has some detailing in it today. So what I'm going to do to start out is I'm going to put this into a ponytail. Now, something you can do to create more grip and hold is you can add texture spray to the roots here and do a little back combing. Doing some back combing in through the roots at a ponytail is not only going to help to anchor in the ponytail and make sure it's lively and has a lot of grit and hold to it, but it also gives you a place for your bobby pins to go. So when you are starting to pin the hair and you're pinning it into this section, this is our foundational base, you want to make sure there's something for the bobby pins to really hold on to. And if you're working with especially really slippery hair, virgin hair, hair that hasn't been color treated or anything, then what tends to happen is the bobby pins can start to slip out easier. So if you have a good grip base in here, especially on brides, it needs to last all night, then this is going to be really essential. So I put it in and I like to loosen it just a little bit because it just gives a little bit more room for my bobby pins to squeeze in there. Okay, Now, once I've done that, I'm not talking about curling the sections today. I've kind of pre-curled the whole thing. That's a lesson for a different time. I really want to focus on the structure and the way that I work so you can walk away with some tangible structure of how to execute other updos. We're not going to talk so much about curling in this particular training. So I might spray again if I need to, but particularly I really want to get some texture in here. So I am going to use a texture spray and follow the pattern of the curl, twisting the curl just to get some more texture in here. And then I'm going to divide it into 2. Now, hair is really thick. You could divide this into 3. If the hair is really thin, you might just do 1 section. But it all is based on how much thickness she has. So I'm going to twist this, and I like to make it a little bit more even because it gets thin at the bottom. So I'm just going to pull the bottom out a little bit to make it a little bit thicker. And then I'm going to twist this up and around the ponytail I just made. And then I'm going to pin this in. So this is going to start to build the base. Every single updo that you do needs to have some sort of a base to work off of, okay? If it doesn't, you don't often have a guide, so you don't really know where everything's pinning into, and things can get lopsided. It also has the possibility to fall flat, which is really not what we want. So you want to make sure that you figure out where your base is going to be. So I want to have a low bun today. And so that's why I did the ponytail here low, because this is where I want everything to come to. And then everything's going to build off of this. So this is where I want it to be. Now, the other thing you want to think about when you're working with brides is you want to make sure that you're standing right behind the work that you're doing. So I want to be like this. And I'll tell you what, because I'm teaching you and I'm working on the side, you're going to notice things start to shift this direction because I'm always pushing this way, and it's not going to be exactly perfect because I'm off to the side. So you want to think about that with braiding. Anything you do, you want to be right behind the work that you're doing to make sure that it's even. Okay, I'm loosening this piece up again, and then I'm just going to layer this over and pin this in. Now, something that's become somewhat of a pet peeve of mine is I have seen a lot of buns being done like this, and I like it, but I got to tell you, there's some ways that it's done that I fear will not last all night. So for brides, you have to have a longevity in mind, right? And so just putting some pins in here, if this is all it was and this wasn't here at all, I wouldn't feel very confident in that staying. So that's why, number 1, I do the ponytail base. That's why I also do the back combing behind. And that's why I pull this hair out a little bit. So I have some grip to be able to continue to put bobby pins in and around in multiple places. So I'm not really opening the bobby pins. What I'm doing is just wiggling them into the curl. So I just kind of wiggle it in and then push it against the scalp. And so I can feel it hitting the head. And so then I know that it's really locking in. And if you see any pieces like this one start to flop, you want to get another pin in there. So get more pins here in your base. And if you are finding that it's still really loose, you might need to start again and use more product. So that would mean you might need to take the twist out again, and you need to spray more texture powder on it so it has more grip together in that curl formation, and then pin again. Having texture spray layered with texture powder is a great trick to making sure that you have a nice secure bun. So once I've done this part, this is my base, okay? And so I need to make sure I like this before I move on. So that means I'm checking from all the sides and angles and making sure it's the right size, it's in the right location. And if that's the case, then I'm going to spray it with kind of my working hairspray. Now at each section that I complete, I spray with working hairspray, and I make sure there's no spots that I'm missing where I need another bobby pin. I get all the frizz in, and then I don't touch it again, and I don't come back to it. So that's why you want to make sure that each section by section, you're like, I like this. This is how I want it to be. So this is the location that I want it. This is the style that I want. Perfect. So I'm going to leave this alone, and this is how it's going to be. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to my next section. Because I'm working section by section, I know that the next step is to do this. So the other 2 steps of my structure that we haven't talked about yet is volume and texture. Now, Volume refers to how much fullness there's going to be on the hair. That not only means how much height is going to be up here, but how much is going to be on the sides and how much she wants in the back. Some people want really voluminous volume all the way through. Some people just want volume on the crown. Some people just want volume in the back. Some people just need volume on the side. Some want all of it, some want none of it. So that's something that you really want to talk to with brides, because you want to know exactly what they're looking for. So as you're working through your updo, you can be thinking about it the whole time. So what I mean by that is, if you have someone who wants a lot of volume, you're not going to achieve a lot of volume simply by backcombing just right at the top here. That's not going to be enough. You need to have volume throughout the whole structure of your updo. So I'm thinking about that as I work. So that means as I'm taking these sections and I'm going to start to pin, I don't want these to be twisted and pulled flat against the head. I want to have a lot of air and lightness in this, maybe by pulling this out, maybe by doing backcombing, maybe by adding some texture powder, and then I'm pinning this in. Even though this isn't going to be on top, I need to know the volume so I can start to create volume in the interior spots of the updos, okay? And it means that I'm also going to be holding everything with kind of a loose tension, because I want it to be really soft and light and build from the inside out. So you really got to know that and lock that in before you start your updo, because everything you do is going to be dependent on the volume that they want. So now conversely, if they don't want any volume, then everything that you're doing is going to be locking it in so it's nice and smooth and you don't have any lift in there at all. So you just need to know that before you begin. So I'm going to be pinning everything in this section to the top of this bun, and then taking the ends and twisting around to make the bun bigger. So like I said, we're going to do a little bit of volume. And so I'm going to start creating some volume within this. And I'm going to pin to the top because this is my foundation and this is where I want it all to come to. Now, the other reason I'm doing this is because if I want to have a nice, soft and airy look on top, I think when you're just starting out, this is a much easier technique than trying to take a whole section of hair and create like a long vertical section that stays really nice and you don't see any holes through it, if you know what I mean. So by kind of layering it, you can get a lot of interest as you pull each piece down and a lot of texture and movement through here by doing one section at a time. So that's why I'm moving on to this section and pulling it in this way. So each section is going to be about 1 inch or so. And if you want to have a lot of volume, then you can backcomb in here, or you can just do what I'm going to do now and use some texture spray. If the hair is really thin and it needs a lot of lift, use some texture powder instead. So that's volume. And the last thing you want to think about is the actual texture. So I'm going to demonstrate this as I talk you through what the texture means. So texture refers to what they want their hair to look like, not the texture that they currently have. So do they want to have boho waves? Do they want to have really tight curls? Do they want to have more of a classic traditional curl? Do they want to have no curl at all? Do they want it to be more wavy? By finding out what kind of texture they want to have in their hair, that's going to help guide you to know what hot tool you're going to use. So if they say, hey, I really want a very like urethral boho look, then you might want to take a bigger curling iron and curl with that in mind. If they really want to have a more traditional curl that's a lot tighter, then you're going to use a smaller curling iron and you're going to do that all the way through. So by knowing that, you need to know that in advance so you can know what tool to use and how you're going to use it as you work. Maybe they want it to have really smooth texture. And so if that's the case, then what you want to be doing is flat ironing as you go to make sure you have a lot of smoothness to it. So those are the kind of questions you want to ask in advance, and that will help guide you as you work and not make sure you're not lost. So something that I see a lot of times is I'll see someone get started on an updo and just start curling the whole head, or they'll do the whole thing in a set and they haven't really even asked any questions. They're just like, well, you know, updos need to be curled or whatever. And so we're just going to get started in curling. But that's going to not only waste a lot of time for you, but it's not going to get you the exact look that the bride is necessarily looking for. Yes, there's a time to do a full head set. Yes, there's a time when you're going to go through layer by layer and you're going to be curling. But when you ask the question of what kind of texture they want, what kind of volume they want, in advance, then you can know how to work section by section, and you save yourself a lot of time as you go. So for this one, you can see I'm not even having to curl. Like I said, I curled some advanced, so she's got just a little bit of bend in it, but I'm not having to curl all this because for texture, I'm using texture spray to create just a little bit of lift in here and just a little bit of movement by twisting it. I'm not actually needing to use the curling iron. Now, if she wanted a lot of curl all the way through here, I would be curling each of these pieces individually before I pin them down. But that's something that I would know in advance because of the fact that I asked those questions during my consultation. So I have all this pinned, and you can see they're all pinned down into the top of the bun that I just made. And I've just pushed these pins straight down in to hold. I'm not worried about making them really flat and putting a lot of bobby pins in because I'm going to be twisting this around and pinning it again. And I also have this hair in front that's going to come back and sweep over, which will cover any kind of bobby pins if I need that. So I'm going to take these two sections now, and I'm going to twist them, and we're going to twist them into the bun. So one thing that I like you to think about when you're working on updos is you want to go back and forth with sections and make sure that you're working evenly. So what I'm going to do here is stand behind, and I'm going to look and see where do these pieces want to lay that look the most aesthetically pleasing. Do they want to go straight down the middle? Do they want to twist up and over? I'm kind of feeling like they could kind of go around the side and maybe back up. This is where you start to kind of use your creativity to decide where you want them to go. Now, one misconception that I think people have about wedding hair is often I hear people say, oh, that looks, doing brides is just too stressful and too hard because brides are so picky and they know exactly what they want. And if you can't execute exactly on what they want, then you're not going to do a good job and they're not going to be happy. But this is the thing is I rarely have a bride. And like I said, I've been doing this 20 years almost. I rarely have a bride who brings me an inspiration picture and she's like, replicate this exactly. More often, she really likes the picture and she'll tell me the things that she likes about it, but she understands, and if she doesn't understand, this is where you need to come in and educate, that her hair is different than the picture. It's a different texture. It's a different color. It's a different length. And we will do the best we can to achieve the look of the picture. However, she's a different person. I'm a different artist. Okay. And so by knowing that, you know that you're going to have a little bit of creative freedom as you're doing the updo. Okay. So the great thing about that is that when you're doing this, then you can start to use your eye to decide exactly where you're going to place the pieces rather than having to be so stressed about trying to replicate a photo exactly. So for example, on this gal that I'm doing right now, what I'm doing here is, just a quick side note, is I'm actually pinning the bobby pins into the hair underneath. So I can take this here and I'm just going internally and kind of wiggling it back and forth. And it's going into the base that we created. And so that way it's laying the curls right on top, but it's not smashing them in against the head. And I can still get this nice updo that's starting to build off of her head. But it's going to stay put. If I don't have the structure underneath and I'm just layering kind of out and has nothing to grip to, it's not going to last. But this is going to last because I'm able to kind of wiggle the pins internally on the base that I created. Okay, I'm liking how this is looking. So I'm going to spray. So what I was saying is that you can use some creativity. And so like for this one, we're going to go ahead and say this is a bride who wanted a low bun. She wanted it to be not just look like a sock bun or like a ballerina bun. She wanted it to be interesting, but the essence of it is she wants it to be a low bun. She doesn't want it to be too big. She doesn't want it to be too small. She doesn't want it to be right on the nape of her neck. She wants it to be a little bit high up. So knowing those things, I can create something beautiful with her hair texture, with my skill, with my eye, and with the shape of her head to create something beautiful that looks like what the look is what she's going for based off the picture, but I'm not stressing out about exactly replicating what another artist did, if that makes sense. Okay, now that we have this part, I'm going to pull down this section and we're going to start to place this over the top. So I've got a couple more things I want to share with you about just bridal hair in general. That's really important to think about as I'm brushing through this. So I'm going to comb through this and I'm just going to create a little bit more texture in here with my curling iron. And then I'm going to pin this softly over the top. So one thing that you want to make sure you're asking in advance is you really want to make sure that you know, did they have any accessories or a veil? So if they're wearing a veil, you want to know how heavy is it? What does the attachment look like? Because those things are going to help inform you what you need to do in the updo to create some space for that. So if they have a veil that maybe they have a cathedral length veil with a blusher, okay, and it's got 2 metal combs that are this long. Okay, well, you really need to know that in advance because that's really going to affect how you do your updo. You know, if they want a really high updo and they have all that going on, you need to talk to the bride about where she's going to put it and where that blusher is going to go over her face. And so those are conversations you want to have in advance. You also might need to create some space and make sure there's not too many bobby pins in the back if you know you have a big metal comb that is going to be needing to have an anchor in the hair, okay? So by knowing what kind of veil they have in advance, that's going to be really helpful for you as you're creating your updo. Now, the other thing that sometimes happens is maybe they have an accessory or they have some sort of family heirloom or something that's sort of unique and might require a little bit of your ingenuity to create space in the updo for it. So if they have something like that, you really just want to be thinking that through before you get started on an updo, because the last things you want to do is, you know, create something really, really beautiful and then find out that you have to put something really heavy or something that has, you know, like a strange clip. I think one time I had somebody who wanted to, she was like remaking a family, it was like a hat because people used to wear wedding hats. So she took like a piece of that hat and she was having somebody in her family attach it to something to stick in her hair. And it was just really, really big and required a lot of space. And it also was heavy. And so I needed to make sure that the updo could support that. And then I knew where it was going. The other great thing is a lot of times when they come to you for the trial, maybe they haven't purchased the veil yet, or maybe they're still kind of troubleshooting things through. And so you can actually make a suggestion about what will work best with their updo. So maybe they have some flowers, dried flowers or something, and they haven't attached them to anything yet. And you can say, hey, let's actually put them on a hairpin like this so we can just slide them right in rather than the alligator clip that you're going to glue them to. So you can start to make suggestions like that. So that's really important to think about when you're working with brides is just veil placement. And then the other thing you want to think about with brides is on where their hair is positioned on their neckline. So if they are marrying somebody who is really tall, a lot of their pictures are going to be facing each other. And at the ceremony, they're going to be facing each other too. So you don't want to have something that's too low that can get smashed down in their neck if they're really looking up. So that is a side note on a low bun. Also, if they have a high neckline dress, some people do, you just want to think about how that's going to work with the hair. So a couple little thoughts there. All right, now that I've taken this top down, this is the part where you can use a lot of delicate hands to create a lot of really soft, beautiful looks for your updo without having it be frizzy. And you can use a lot of your designing to create something really soft and beautiful. And this is where this kind of comb works really well. So this prong, because what you can do is as you kind of twist this and lay this over the top, you can use this to get a little bit of lift here. You can use this to pull down any frizz that's there. And you can just use this to kind of hold it in place and make sure it's exactly how you want it and be able to really get a good look at it before you pin it in. So I love this tool and I highly recommend using this instead of your fingers because it also just helps to not have any hairspray or anything stick to you either. So what I'm doing is I'll just hold this in and I'm just going to go straight down with this pin into the top of the updo that I have. Now it's not super, super secure. You can see there's just one pin in there, but it starts to give me the shape that I'm looking for. And it still makes this movable if I need to raise it up. And it's easy to take out if for some reason I need to adjust it. So one thing you want to think about is you don't want to have any holes or gaps in here. And so that means that you need to be lifting and kind of spreading out these curls. And you can use texture spray. You can use texture powder in advance. That's what I've got going on in her hair is I've got a lot of texture powder, and that just gives me a lot of mobility, because a lot of times what you'll see is you start to do this on someone that doesn't have any product in their hair up here, and you just get holes. So you just start to see gaps in the hair, and that doesn't look very nice. So I'm just pinning these in really on top of the bun I have below, just to start to get the shape that I'm looking for on top. I'm trying to kind of create a little texture here and still have it be really soft. So this is a great tool. The other thing that I really recommend is to get some smoothing cream. So a product that I love is the Osis or Schwarzkopf smoothing cream. I'm going to show that to you in a moment here. This one, it's called Tame Wild. And so you can just use a little bit in your fingertips if you're finding that the hair is really frizzing up here. And you can use that in your fingertips as you're kind of smoothing this through. And as you're pulling out any of this, this texture and curl to create the lift here. And that just helps to keep it from being frizzy and making it really smooth and clean. So I'm putting another pin in here. And because I created that texture underneath, I still have lift from underneath that is showing through as well. And that's what I want. I want to have that lift be starting internally and not just from the top. Now, sometimes when you start to do the top like this, especially I live in Minnesota, it's so dry. You can start to see like the flyaways start to go. And if you're finding that, it's okay to use a little hairspray as you work, or I like to use a little texture spray over the top of the curls as I'm going to pin them, because that helps just lay the frizz down, but it's not too sticky. And you don't want it to be sticky when you're working with it. So this is not all really locked in tightly yet, but that's okay, because I'm going to be pinning this in around the bun. And then I'm using this hair to come over the top, and that will hide any pins here. So before I even go to pin all this, what I want to do is go through and do any lifting and kind of pulling apart that I need to do here. And the other thing that's super important is you want to be checking in with your bride, okay? So this is where you would check in with your bride and say, hey, are you liking the amount of volume that we have going on here? Or you can show them when we were kind of working on that bun, like, is this the direction that you're thinking for the bun? Are you liking how this is looking? And they don't have to be, you know, every 5 minutes or so, but after you've done something sort of significant, you can check in with them to make sure you're on the same page and you're on the right track. Because it's much easier if you start to build this and she's like, oh, that's looking too big. It's much easier when you're down below working on that bottom section to tighten it up, rather than you do the whole updo. She's never seen the back. And then she's like, I love it, but can you make it smaller? You're like, okay, I'll try to be as magical as possible. Or you're like, okay, and then you internally start to panic, right? So by checking in advance, that's what helps you as you go, especially when you're starting out, to make sure that you're really nailing it and pleasing the bride and she's on the same page with you. Now, in the case of this top volume, I would want to make sure this volume is good. I would look at it from behind. I would look at it from all angles. I would have her face the mirror, look in the front and say, do you like how this is looking? Do you want it bigger? Do you want it smaller? And if it's looking good, then you can lock it in. If she says she wants it a little bit higher, before you go and start over, you can just use this comb and pull it up a little bit. If she says she wants it flatter, you might need to take some bobby pins out here and repin them in to bring it down a little bit. But if she loves it, you can go ahead and spray it down. So this is where you're getting those frizzy pieces in. I don't know if you've noticed as I work, but I try not to touch the hair too much. And when I do touch the hair, I mean, obviously I'm touching the hair the whole time, right? Because I'm doing it. But I'm not overly brushing. I'm not touching, recurling, touching. I like to do one piece at a time, pin it in really gently, and then move on. And that helps me keep it from getting too frizzy or having all those flyaways come, okay? Now, because this isn't in super tight, I'm going to take a clip and just put it over the top to lock that in before I start pinning this. And now this is where it comes down to your creativity again. So this is where you're going to come and put the curls wherever you think they need to be. Now, the thing about working in the way that we're working right now, where we have a lot of sections, is that in the beginning, what I have found is by creating more sections with the hair is you have more opportunities to fill in like gaps or something, or thin spots, or balance things out. So when you are creating the updo, then you can create balance because you have more hair to work with. Sometimes if you take too big of sections or too many things at once, then what can happen is you're like, oh shoot, like I really like this side, but this side could use a little more hair, something like that. And that gets kind of tricky. So by giving yourself section by section, what that does is it gives you more room to be able to just kind of fill it in and make it look how you want. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of holding the curls over this bun and seeing where I want them to go. And I'll show you a little bit of like my process for how I would pin this in. So I want these to come down and come over the bottom of the bun like that. And so what I'm going to do is pin on the curl inside. So I open my pin up just slightly, grab the hair like this, and then I'm just going to pin it into the bun, and I'm just going straight in, and I can because I created that foundation. So by having that foundation in there, I have something to pin to every time. So I'm just going to kind of go around and quickly do this for the sake of time. This mannequin could surely use a haircut. She's got so many bad dead ends. And a lot of times especially when a bride has dead ends like that, if she can't get a trim before the wedding, which I often recommend she does, then you can just tuck these ends away. So you can kind of twist them in. And what I'll do is just open up my bobby pin, grab this end and get it into that bun. And I can do that again with this piece to get rid of it. So you kind of have this end that's really frizzy and not looking good. You can grab this and I just kind of tunnel pin it into the updo and hide it away. So you can see I've got a little bend here that needs to be pinned up. I take the hair here and I use my bobby pin to do the work for me. And you can just kind of look around and see where there's any gaps where you need to pull out any little sections. And I'm just working around the bun, making it even and deciding the best placement for these little strands that we have here. Now, if you wanted to have just more of a smooth bun, then you could take all these ends and just move them in one sheath around, okay? Another thing you can do to create more kind of fullness is in each of these sections, you can come through and pull them apart with your fingers. And because we've done the prep work on the hair and you have the texture spray in there, it will pull apart nicely. If the hair is really, really thin, then sometimes what you have to do is do a little bit of back combing internally on a curl before you pin it, and that creates some more fullness. So mostly I just want to kind of step around and make sure it's looking how I want. And then I can remove this piece and I can hairspray the section that we have down. So the thing about having loosely pinned here, now I'll have space to pull this up and over, and it will kind of cover the bobby pins that are showing here. So I have a little bit of bobby pin showing on the top, but that's okay because I can cover it with the sides. Now, one thing that I forgot that I wanted to show you is if you have hair that's really thin and you need to have a little more bulk in it, use one of these mesh donuts. You've probably seen a lot of people teach on this, but they come in a big pack, like online on like Amazon, like this. And then you can just cut it in half, and you can fold it and you can place it over that ponytail, and then you have more hair internally to be able to pin into. Okay, now I want to show you a couple techniques for the front, and I'll show you also how I do that curl, how I make a curl bigger when it needs to have a little bit more fullness to it, okay? So we're getting to the front, which is, like I said, a really important part, and You're going to obviously know what kind of part you want, or maybe they don't have any part at all. They want it off the top of their face, but this is what we have left to work with. Okay. And I've kind of pre-curled this, but I recommend getting this curled and having it looking somewhat decent before you get started on the back. So what I mean by that is you might need to do a set on the front. So say you're going to have some pieces curled left out around her face. So maybe you're just having a little section here. You want to get this curled in advance. You're going to roll it up just like so, and you're going to pin this in, and it's just going to sit like that while you're doing her hair. That's going to give this time to set and create a lot more hold for this to last all night. So your brides need to have their hair last from, maybe they're getting it done at 10 a.m. and they're having pictures outside, and then they're having a cocktail hour after their ceremony, and then they're having a reception that doesn't start until 6 o'clock, and they have their hair done at 9 a.m. Not only are they having it to be throughout the whole day, but also they're getting hugged. Lots of people are touching them. Like, there's just a lot going on. So you need to do everything you can to make sure it lasts a long time. And doing a set, especially on curls that are going to be done around the face, is huge. Now, the other reason is sometimes when brides are in the process, and if you have their hair sleeked away from their face with big clips right here, they're like, I do not look good. And especially when the photographer is taking a lot of pictures as they're getting ready, you want them to like those too. So I like to curl the hair in the front, and then I'll just pin it just like this away, or I'll put the whole thing in one big set like this so the makeup artist can do her work. But that way they don't feel too crazy as they're getting their hair done and getting pictures taken. Now I'm going to start in the thicker side first. So because it's parted on the side, she's going to have more hair here. And I'm going to divide this in half, bring it back, come on this side, bring it back, and then come back to the front. I like to work back and forth in everything that I do with updos, because that makes sure it's really balanced as you go. So something here that's really important to note is you want to know how much tension to have. So that's how much you are going to be pulling back to create the volume here. So is it going to be pulled back really tight because they want no volume? Do they want a lot of volume on the side here? If you need to create more volume, you might need to back home internally here. But you need to know that before you get started. And then you want to know, do they want their ears to show? Do they want their ears to be covered? Because I kid you not, like I said, I've been in this industry a super long time, very passionate about brides. And I know from experience of working with them and from my own self, and I'm sure you guys can say this too, is sometimes I've done an updo and I can tell they like it, but there's something off. And I'm like, I know there's something. And so sometimes I just say, mess with the front. Tell me what you're thinking. And I kid you not, sometimes they're like, they hold it up like that, like just a 1/4 inch above their ear. And they're like, that's what I want. That'll make it better. And I literally just have to tighten it a touch like this. And then it was all better. Or that was, kind of similar. I had done somebody's hair and brought it low like this. And she was like, it's not quite right. We spent so long trying to figure out what it was. And she just wanted it like pulled up this way instead. And all I had to do was take this front section and pull it up like that, more like kind of like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. And then she was like, yes, that's it. And it's just like, we are so particular about exactly how we want our hair to look with our face. And granted, some people really don't care. Okay. But sometimes if you're trying to troubleshoot with a bride and figure out what it is, that's it. So that's why you just really want to ask these questions a lot in advance, because sometimes that can be the missing ticket. Okay. So I'm just going to lay this over the top, and I'm going to show you my trick for making the front look really soft and natural, but secure. So I'm pulling this out. It's super, super soft. And I'm going to pin this in. Oops. Okay. Pin this here like so. So I'm pinning it across just so I have it held in place. Now these are the two things you want to do to make this look really soft and beautiful, but lock it in. Is first you're going to hairspray it. So once you have it how you like it, hairspray it. And I spray in the direction of the curl. So I'm kind of like sweeping up with the hairspray. And then you're going to do two things. So the first thing is you're going to take your pins and just put pins internally into this curl. So I'm going internally to the curl, and then I'm just going to push down. So they're hitting this updo that we've created down here. So that's going to lock this in. Okay. But what you want to do is go into the side. You're going to grab a little bit of hair here, and then you're going to push it forward, up and forward. So you're kind of going back into it this way. And what that will do is make this soft. So you can see how this is kind of soft and loose, and it still looks really loose, but you know there's bobby pins along here holding that in. So you can do as many as you need to make sure it stays put, but that's going to make that lock in and look really nice and soft without disrupting your bun in the back and without having like flat pins against the head or making it too tight. So once I've done that, you can see I've just laid that over the top. Now I'm going to come through and do that on the other side. And then I'm going to worry about these ends. So you can just section out if you want any hair left in front and comb this through. For the sake of time, I'm not going to divide this into multiple sections, but typically I would. And using my wire comb. And again, you can just take this. So let me pull you to the side here. Take this just to hold it in place. And then you're going to go through with your bobby pins. And you're going to go internally to the curl, locking it down in here. And then you're going to go on the side like this. So I'm just grabbing the hair and then pushing it forward. And it goes under the hair, so it's hiding. You're not seeing those ends. You're just locking it in. It's a great trick. And then hairspraying this in like so. And then what you have left to do then is just detail these little pieces in the back. And what I was saying about creating a little bit more, lift if you need to in a curl. Let me show you how I would pin this in really quick, and then I'll show you how I would create that. And that will kind of wrap us up with the lesson. So I use my bobby pins to kind of pin internally, pushing down like that. And then I'll take these ends and just kind of tuck them in and hide them. Like I said, this gal needs a trim. So I grab the ends and then I'm just going to kind of tunnel that in to the inside of my bun here. And then I use the tail comb a lot just to kind of tuck in ends and not use my fingers so it doesn't get too frizzy. Okay. As I'm using my fingers, I say that. All right. So what I wanted to show you with this piece is what you can do to kind of extend a curl is brush through it. So instead of, if this is feeling like too thin and you don't want it to look thin like that, you would brush back comb underneath like that. So it's wide, and then just smooth over the back combing and then pin it like so. And so then that way I've created a lot of fullness in that one piece. You can see that really closed up the gap just off of that one little piece. And you can do that all throughout. So if I was really taking my time on this updo, I would have done that probably a lot more as I was just trying to create it. But then it even gives you more room to kind of spread that out and make that fuller right there. So at this point, now you're really just tucking in little ends, making sure the details are, everything's looking exactly how you want, figuring out if you have any accessories that you want to do. Maybe she doesn't want this huge piece sticking up in front. Maybe she wants to pin this one back too. So I might come through and do that. But that's, coming down to the little details that you talk through with your bride. So if you guys have any questions about anything bridal hair, I love working with brides. It's exclusively what I do. I don't work behind a chair. And I feel like it's the most fun career. Okay. It's so much fun. You have a different, you're meeting new people. You can make really great money. You get to spend the honor of spending the morning with someone on their wedding day is just so beautiful. And I think it is so much fun. And so if you want to learn more about bridal hair, if you want to learn more in depth about how to do this, about how to pin properly, if you want different techniques for pinning, if you want to learn more about products, if you want to really go over curling, if you want to learn how to do Hollywood glam waves, all those things, I have a boot camp coming up. And so I do have a YouTube channel, and there's lots of free teachings on the YouTube, but which you're welcome to join that as well. But the boot camp that I have coming up on January 5th is going to be 6 weeks, and it's going to be about an hour and a half session once a week, and it's going to be me and 15 other people, and we're going to be live enjoying each other's real life company virtually. And I'm going to be teaching, and you can work alongside me with your mannequin, and we can collaborate. I can answer questions in real time. I can help you learn how to really nail these techniques so you can really get started in bridal hair and have a really, really beautiful and wonderful career. It's so much fun. And I really want you to be able to feel confident, feel excited, and feel like you have the skills that you need to be able to do weddings. And so if you want to join me for that boot camp, I was running a sale over Black Friday and I ended that, but I decided that between now and when I start on January 5th, if you take this whole training and you want to get in at $297, the training is $497 regularly, but you can get $200 off. Just email me. So my email is the updocollective@gmail.com. updocollective@gmail.com, and say you want in at the discount, and I will send you a discount code and you can sign up for $200 off just for joining me today in this Intro to Bridal Masterclass. So I've taken a lot of classes over the years. I have paid a lot of money to fly places, to stay in hotels. And what I have struggled with over the years is that often when I go, I learn one or two updos, and sometimes they're relevant, sometimes they're not. But it's very rare that I learn a lot of techniques that I can take to a lot of places. And so what I want, and apply to a lot of updos. And so what I want to do is to really give you the foundations to be able to execute any updo, not just now in 2024 and 2025, but to be able to do it 10 years from now when styles completely change, that you're able to adapt because you actually know the foundational techniques on how to do upstyling that apply to anything. So you don't have to just go in and learn what's trending, which it's fun and it's worth it to also do those things. But learning the foundations is going to be really key to be able to have a long career in bridal hair. And so that is my goal in teaching in this boot camp. That's going to be 6 weeks, and it's going to be really fun. And you're also, just going to have the accountability to make sure you're learning and staying on task with getting ready for the 2025 bridal season. So if you have any questions about what I did today, about products, about really anything in bridal hair, feel free to, like I said, email me to get those $200 off as well, the updocollective@gmail.com. But wherever you're watching this, YouTube, Instagram, if you're watching it on the Updo Collective Facebook page, drop any questions in the comments, and I will be sure over the next couple of days here to answer your questions for you. So I want to be a resource for you. I want to be a mentor, a support for you. So let me know how I can help you in any way that I can. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, I'm Heidi with the Updo Collective, and thanks for joining me. And I will hopefully see you in my boot camp coming up in January, otherwise in the Facebook group or on my YouTube channel. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye, you guys.